Welcome to Expedition Self on OMTimes Radio with lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and creator of the worlds of Expedition Self, Sam Parrotto. Sam shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching how to go inside so we can build an incredibly powerful, dynamic, and validating relationship with the self. Expedition Self is laced with stellar, unexpected insights about what it means to be human. Expedition Self is a masterful, inclusive, transparent, and down-to-earth on-air conversation that invites you to seek real-time answers to your real-life exploration while gaining command around the language, the interrelationship, and the ways of being so critical to evolving and creating your most fulfilled life. Listen now and ignite your self-development process with Sam Parrotto.
Wow, wowza. That was quite an intro, isn't it? I sat here thinking, oh my gosh, on my first debut on-air experience, I'm not sure stellar is going to be what comes through, but I'm going to do my very best. Anyway, welcome. And I am sitting here kind of in shock of my own experience because this day has been coming for a very, very long time, and yet here I sit in this particular moment. I often think about that, like when I watch somebody be in the Olympics or do something that they've waited for and practiced for, and then all of a sudden the moment actually comes, and I think I'm having one of those experiences. So anyway, I am so happy to be here, and I'm happy to be able to talk about growth work and going into the self and how to build a relationship with the self. And I want to just start by talking a little bit about my background and how I got to this moment. And I also really want to make sure that I reiterate what my purpose always is on this show. And that is to give you a little slice of the pie that allows you to develop a more dynamic, robust, and engaging relationship with the self. And the reason that matters is because your resource, the resource you have most access to that you can do something with in life, that resource is you, right? So if you have parts of yourself that are locked away or that you can't get access to or are kind of heading off to the left when you'd like to go to the right, then we know that the more you develop a relationship with the inside of yourself, the more you're going to be able to really access that and put it into use when it matters most. And I just have to say that's one of those moments that's happening right now for me. We're here to talk about creativity and how it helps you access the whole self. And here I sit in a moment where I am having the sense of allowing something creative to happen. So although I have 7 bullet points for today, I'm actually sitting here thinking, okay, let the creative force of the moment come through. And of course, what makes that happen is that this is a live talk show. So I am hoping that when I open it up, that you'll all be willing to call in and talk a little bit about your life or how what I'm sharing about makes a difference for you, or how it fits in your world. And that exchange and the energy that comes from that is what really creates the Expedition Self Live talk show. So, okay, so let me go to the next piece, which is really about my life. So as I grew up when I was young, and I think all of us think back about what we were thinking about when we were young and what was going on for us, I found that the words that people were using, the conversations people were having, did not match up with what was happening in my head. And it was very confusing, and a lot of times it was overwhelming because I was dealing with a lot of difficult things to understand for a child. And I would watch the adults around me. It seemed like what they were doing or how they were doing it, it felt out of sync or as if it wasn't really fulfilling for them. And so my study and my learning around life really started with that sense of being in disconnect from what was going on around me to what was happening inside. So I would have questions like, why do people act that way? Or, why am I failing in this? Or why isn't this relationship going the way I thought it was going to? Like, all that confusion is really what led me to start exploring and trying to understand what is really going on with me. And of course, I was lucky. I met teachers and mentors and coaches along the way. And when I hit my early 20s, after I'd flunked out of college, I found myself thinking one day I really didn't want to work for anybody. And so I don't know what exactly happened, but overnight I decided I was going to start a little business. So at about 22, that's what I did. And of course I started a business, but I had all of these fragmented different parts of myself, and they didn't work very well together. And so that starting of the business pretty much started to show evidence all the time of what I wasn't, what I couldn't pull together, what didn't work, how my thoughts didn't gel with other thoughts. And certainly in all of my relationships with my friends and my clients, I started to look around and say, wait a minute, something's up here. And it was about that time I really started to explore what happens inside the human being. How do we come to be who we are? And of course, that was a big deal. It's just, I felt like I had opened up this incredible treasure chest of like cool secrets. And of course, most of those secrets came because I started to question who I was. What did I really think? What was really honest? If I disconnected from what somebody else thought, I was left then. Well, what was happening inside of me? So that really started my journey, and I'm not going to go into big, long explanation of all these pieces, but I do want to say that to me, every single step of the way of my life, and I'm now, in my late 50s, I have found that this idea of being able to connect with the inner self and learn how to listen and be able to adopt the language that, or not adopt, but actually hear the various languages that the inside of the self provide, that listening just opens up the world. So that's our question today, is how does creativity help you to connect with your whole self? And I have to say that I've always loved the idea of creativity, but I didn't grow up with this idea that I was so creative. I certainly didn't think that I could draw. I didn't imagine that I could do anything that was artistic. And so as I got involved in my growth process, I would draw out a dream, or I would depict in some kind of a chart form, like how I thought one part of myself, like my emotional self, was interacting with my physical self, But the whole idea about that was just to kind of get it out of my head so that I wouldn't feel so frustrated that I was, holding on to things so much. And so as I got a little bit older and I started to look at the way that art was showing up in the world, because it stopped looking like fine art, somebody was painting a beautiful landscape or a perfect scene over the lake. And I started to realize that art showed up in a whole lot of other ways. And I was lucky enough to land at a workshop. And at this workshop, this art teacher, and I don't remember her name, she had us take a portrait, or there was a portrait of Ben Franklin, and she had us turn it upside down. And she said, now just draw the lines. And, I had in my head that I didn't draw. I couldn't draw. And I had in my head that the way something looked in my mind was how it should look on the page. The next thing I knew, when I turned it upside down, it resembled Ben Franklin. I mean, it was really shocking. I was like, are you kidding? I can draw. And, the places where we don't think we can do something, those places are so limiting to us. And a lot of times they embed themselves under layer, right? Like, have you ever found yourself saying, oh, I'm just not athletic? It's the same thing. And so all of a sudden, someone showed me that by letting go of some idea that I had, that really, really mattered to me deeply, but I didn't know it, that I found the freedom and the opportunity to actually say, oh, I can draw. And of course, that the first thing I drew after that was a hamburger. Someone said to me, "Oh, you don't have to draw what's in your head. You can find a picture of something and draw it." And so I found a picture of a hamburger, and oh my gosh, it was like, I just can't even describe. It was so incredibly liberating. Now, again, you'd say, well, okay, so that's cool. You've got a creative thing, you wanted to draw, right? Except that here's what happened. I started to recognize that by being willing to do something that was creative, like to connect with a place that I really didn't know and allow it to be exactly what it is, and then to also not have it have to be something, which of course was a process unto itself. What I discovered is that in that zone, the left part of my brain and the right part of my brain, they got to talk. And then I also found that the subconscious part or the unconscious part of me all of a sudden would come through and show something to me that I wasn't even aware of was possible. Like I would delight myself. You've been delighted, right? You know what that feels like. All of a sudden, you can't even believe something shows up and there it is. And so the next person I met was Cynthia Morris, and she runs a group called Original Impulse. She's this awesome, creative human being, and she pretty much, I wanted to depict my dreams, and I was frustrated that I'd have all these epic, beautiful, graphically described dreams, and I couldn't get them on the page. And she said, listen, just use a symbol, like put an X for that, or just put a little stick figure for this one. And you know what happened in my brain right at that moment was I realized how rigid, right? Like I was so incredibly rigid that something had to look a certain way or be a certain way. Now, I have to tell you from a growth and development standpoint, that had very far-reaching tentacles, right? Because it's kind of like all of a sudden I came face to face with an aspect of the way I thought about things that was incredibly limiting, but I didn't realize was at play. And so all of a sudden my dreams were like these little maps, right? I'd have a little pathway over to the left and I'd show 3 people talking, and then I'd come over here, and if there was a chimney in that scene, I would just put the chimney. And so this idea that art is available to us, now I'm talking about drawing, but it's actually anything that allows us to give form or provide some language or symbolism to what's happening inside the self. That's an incredible mechanism for communicating with the self. And it keeps encouraging, right? This is the part that really matters. It encourages us to let go of this intellectual dominance of telling ourselves what we're supposed to be, right? And if we're going to open to the self, part of what we have to open to is this whole idea that there's aspects of ourselves that want to be heard but have been stifled or have been told that they really don't have value or they're insignificant. And so the minute this creativity piece that I'm talking about starts to come into play, no matter what it is, where you give yourself room to get off your own case, then the next thing you know is other aspects of yourself can show up. And this happened to me in the pandemic or the last year. I discovered cooking, and I used to only cook for parties, really. The next thing I knew, I actually realized I was loving cooking, and I found certain ways that I like to cook. Like I like to not cook when I'm under pressure, and I started to hear the nuances and the specific things that bring me joy and bring me delight. So this idea of how does creativity help you to connect with your whole self, that's what I'm hoping you'll call in and share a little bit about, or ask me questions. I'm happy to share my own stuff, right? And we can talk a little bit more about how you might be able to connect your creativity, because I'm interested in your stories and your experience. And, you know, like that's the whole idea here, is not just that I talk about my world, but that we get to connect about yours as well. So, all right. So that's our question that we're going to be working with when we come back from break. All right. And I want you to focus while we're on break about like, where is that sentence that says, I'm not blank? right? And see if you can go back and think about where you concluded that the way you thought art looked or the way you thought something should turn out may in fact not matter one iota, right? That's what you want to think about when we go on break. Now, I have to tell you, we're going on break at supposedly the 20-minute mark. And that's what I wanted to tell you earlier is, since this is my first experience, I'm pretty sure the logistic part of this is the part I'm going to flub up. So I think I've hit break time before I'm actually supposed to have hit break time. And I'm hoping, yes, I definitely would like to go now. There we go. I'll see you back after break.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them?
By their clothes,
their age,
the way they speak.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
We've all felt left out. And for people who move to this country, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
So I just want to comment a little bit about that music. Is that the coolest music? I'm really excited that I have my own music, and I realize it's a good thing I got it because I'm able to take breaths with it and settle down. So, wow, that's a very cool part. All right, so we had break. I got to take a drink of water. I hope that you were able to ponder this idea of where did you decide you're not something, and this other idea which has to do with what if this creativity that I'm talking about, the version that I mean, what if it is the pathway that you could open up and develop so that you get to listen to the different parts of yourself rather than just really connecting with the dominant part of your brain, right? And I think a lot of us think we're either right-brained or we're left. I really think that that's not true. The parts of the self really are, when I think about the parts, I think about the intellect, which is a linear and functions a lot like a computer and is sorting things all the time and assessing and deciding whether they fit in one category or another. And then, of course, you have the emotional experience, which I think has a very different language, right? It's feeling, right? You sense things, and a lot of times we'll think our emotions, but really if you're in touch with your emotional experience, it has a quality of water. It dribbles over ourselves. I couldn't find the word for that. And then this idea of our physical experiences, it really talks to us through our muscles and through pain and through the sensory kinesthetic part of who we are. And then there's the being layer, right? And this being layer is looking to find an inroad because it's really largely connected to what's in your unconscious. So that being layer is symbolic, and it often will give you imagery, and the being layer is often random. It doesn't fit in kind of a linear thought process. So it generally is the kind of thing we will dismiss, right? Because we're well, that doesn't fit with where I'm trying to go or the direction I'm headed. And so that's why this creativity piece, whatever you find it to be, again, mine has focused a lot on drawing, but there's all kinds of ways you can be creative. Gardening, right? I think cooking is creative. It's the place where you open up the receptors inside your psyche. And then if you bring an intention to opening up those receptors, where you say, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to listen for, I'm going to watch and invite that which I don't recognize, right? That's the part that's so hard, that I think even has us stay away from. It may even be the reason, really, that we say, oh, I'm not good at that, is because who wants to be in the unknown, right? And so that unknown place, though, is the very location of the opportunity to be more connected to self. And again, more connected to self means you've got a lot more inner resource to bring to bear to everything that you're trying to handle every day and everything that you're trying to create. You know, one of the things I noticed through the last year was that as I talked to people, and I lived through it myself, was that because we were inside our homes so much, it seemed like everywhere someone turned, they ran into themselves. And of course, for some of us, if we haven't spent a lot of time opening up that relationship, it was like, whoa, what was that? I want my routine back, you know? And so this work, this going inside that I'm talking about, what it does is it creates this opening where what lives behind what you're conscious of, what lives behind what you drive towards, and what lives behind all the ways that you survive every single day, it now has an opportunity to be heard by you. That's huge, right? It's just huge. So, okay, so this idea of turning the pick upside down, I'd like to go back to that for just a moment. So think about that, right? That all art, everything in life is lines. It's space, right? It's light, and then it's shadows or it's darkness. So there's another metaphor there, right, for growth. And that metaphor is cool because we have a tendency to only want to go to the things we like or the things that are kind of in the light or we're happy with. And really, it's those other things. It's the things not yet illuminated or not yet seen that hide around the corner, that where the pure potential of us lies, because those are the things we haven't yet explored. So there again, we get to see with this art, the art is that just by drawing lines on a page, all of a sudden my perspective and yours begins to open up and take the labels and the judgments and the assessments off of how we see the world. Now, I don't know about you, but I work hard to survive. I work hard to pay the bills. And it's not like I sit around and eat bonbons, right? And so, who has time to stop and say, oh, let me just change my perspective? So for me, it had to have some purpose. And of course, when I talk about starting a business when I was in my 20s, I refer to my time at that time as a business owner, as I was like the original dragon lady. And so it was going to be important to figure out what lived around those corners, right? What was it that I didn't see or didn't understand or didn't connect with that were having some influence on how I operated and the intensity? And that was the piece that I got to see in the art, right? Is that that my expectations create this gap between what's real and where I'm at, and that I didn't treat myself very well in there, and of course I then didn't treat others very well in there. Of course, I'm sharing a big piece about this, right? Because I lived in my 20s having to come face to face with that gap, and really then starting to think about, why would I have such an expectation in my life? What would set that up? What would cause that to happen? So I don't know if this is landing for anybody. I'm hoping that it is. But I would love it if you would call in. The phone number is 202-570 7057. And I would love to hear about your expectations versus where you actually land. I'd love to hear about the parts of yourself that you'd rather not connect to, that are part of the art that isn't in the white space. And also, if there's anything else really that just feels like, hey, I'd like to share it around creativity and the kind of difference that it's made for you and what you've gotten to see in terms of your life and how you think about life. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a minute to maybe get on that phone. Do I need to do the number one more time? Yes, I'm definitely taking callers. Absolutely. And whoever it was that just called in, we had a little bit of a misconnection here. So please call back because I'd love to hear what you had to say. And I'm really excited about whatever it is. Now I feel like I'm missing out. So, okay, I will give you the number again. It's 202-570-7057. Okay. All right, well, let me come back to this idea of the left and the right brain. So, are you connected to this idea that you try to put yourself in a box? You try to give yourself a label so that you can have something to feel good about, like you can have an identity, right? So, and then, of course, I have met people that it's like they do no labels. They don't want to be put in any kind of a box, right? So I feel like that's kind of the same thing as just going from the left to the right. So being, the whole idea of being is that it's like taking the deepest breath from the insides of the arches of your feet and breathing it up and all the way through your body, up out of your belly, right? And right out in an out breath. And so the idea that this bridge, this creativity bridge that I'm talking about, it opens up that channel, it opens up that highway, and it starts to encourage these deeper places where we just exist, and we have value simply because we exist. We don't have to make it into an identity. We really just get to express it and bring it forwards. That is the bridge we're looking for, because we need all the help that we can get. The mind is so busy categorizing, right? The intellect is so busy trying to take over and make sure that it keeps us safe and in control and managing things properly and looking good, right? All that's going on all the time. And so unless we develop other aspects or other ways or methods to actually support the whole self in communicating and getting that information up, we're probably going to get ourselves in that hamster wheel. And we're just going to keep doing the same stuff over and over that we know. We're going to identify with ourselves as if we're always the same. And of course, what that does over a long time is it zaps us of our energy and our vitality. And who wants that, right? Like we want to feel alive and vital without having to push ourselves and drive ourselves all the time. So this creativity thing, it trains us in a very different way. Okay, so we have our first caller. I'm so excited. All right, and it's Danny from Maryland. Would you like to come on and share whatever's on your mind or your thoughts?
Yeah, hi, Sam. So nice to,
hey,
to
Danny.
talk to you. Was thinking, so I just wanted to share a little bit of an experience around creativity that I had, which was something that really changed my perspective on it was when I went to graduate school. I went to a program that really stressed like creativity and play. And, when you were talking about like the things that you just think you can't do, or I think I learned a little bit in that program to sort of just like let go of some of that, which was really cool. And one of the things that we did was we did this thing called like a blind drawing, where we literally just like you had to close your eyes and do the drawing. And it's an interesting exercise because it really sort of like made you let go of the judgment, and then you open your eyes and you're like looking at it and you're like, then all your judgment comes back, But I don't know. So, but it was just really cool exercise, and I was thinking about that when you were we were talking about some of those stuff.
It sounds like a really great exercise, actually. And, the thing is, Danny, is that when you talk about you have to close your eyes so you can't see, it's kind of like what I was talking about in terms of like the white space on a page versus the dark space, or like what's around the corner. There's a metaphor there, right? That when you can't see and plan and know what you're doing, then you give yourself over to something. And I think that's what I hear you describing.
Yeah, sort of, it's really funny when you said you can't see or plan what you're like. Immediately I went to like an anxious place because that's just like I'm like a super planner, and if I don't have a plan, then anxiety like creeps up. So, but yeah, in that space,
well, that's
kind
it
of
though, right? With creativity. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Oh no. I mean, in that space, like in the creativity space, I'm a little more able to let it go, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly what we're talking about, like really understanding that's, I mean, when you get to experience it on the creativity side, then you can say, hey, you know what? I want to experience this somewhere else too, not just there. Because at least then you have a contrast or a comparison, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It opens up like a world, like there's another way to be.
Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the tip too, because I hope that other listeners might actually go try to do what you just described. They might go close their eyes and draw, or they might do what I did where you turn something upside down and actually draw it. Because I feel like that's the cool thing to take away from a show like this as an activity, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for the show.
Well, I just really want to say thank you for being my first caller in, Danny. I really appreciate it.
I'm honored. So, all right, take care.
All right, have a great day.
Okay,
all
bye.
right, well, we have another caller, Stephanie from Indiana.
Hello.
Stephanie? Hello.
Oh.
Welcome to Expedition Self.
Thank you very much. I have never called in to a place before, so this is a first for me as well.
Wow. Yeah, does it feel nervous-y to you?
Well, it kind of goes in line with my share that I wanted to share about creativity, which is just that if I don't know how it's supposed to go, then I feel like I can't do it perfectly. And that's what makes me feel nervous. But I wanted to call in and share, hopefully long story short, but I am remembering that I used to do a lot of like art, like what you typically feel is art, or even like adorn myself. So I'd wear jewelry, or I'd even draw on my skin with an ink pen, like henna tattoo style. And then I went to college and a lot of that fell away. But I still have this belief that really anything in life can be art. You can, artfully be a call service agent and deal with cranky people all the time. There's an art to everything, I really believe. But typical visual arts or even musical arts are things that you'd, not necessarily place in a standard workplace, maybe, unless you were an artist by trade, fell out of my life. And so I, really struggled with reconnecting with that part of me, because it became this world for me of rules and systems to create, quote unquote, that art, of work. And so I really left one side away while I focused on the other one. But I found I can reach it a little bit more, hopefully the creativity is flowing just out of my soul, more and more as I work on it. But things like going to like a wine canvas where they tell you literally what to paint, or doing an art project with my children for their art class, as simple as tearing a piece of construction paper and then tearing another one a little bit longer, then tearing a third a little bit longer, and you paste them on top of each other on a white background, and there you have a sunset mountain range, just very simple things. So it's almost like paint by numbers. And I felt like that was almost cheating creativity, but, maybe it's not.
Well, it's interesting because what you're talking about, this idea of like artful living and then putting that back into your life, where you realize that being creative that way can be anywhere, and it doesn't have to be complex and doesn't have to be planned out, right? Mm-hmm. That's the part of what you're doing when you invest your time that way, is you're saying to the self, hey, you know what? It's okay that you don't always have everything organized. And you're starting to allow that inner part of you that doesn't actually want to fall in line to realize it has space too, and that it's considered valid and important as well. And so it's kind of like a conduit, right? Where you're working with the 3 pieces of construction paper that you're pulling. But at the same time, what's happening is your psyche is registering that you're paying attention to it in an entirely new way. Mm. And I feel like that's a big deal, right? And I don't know if you found some reward from that or not, but to me, that's what's actually happening while you're putting that back in your space.
Yeah, it feels good on a level. It just kind of feels relaxing or satisfying or something. Whereas if I think about trying to go do a creative project right now, I'm almost anxious of it because I don't know perfectly how to do it. But once I start doing it, it feels great.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you for calling and sharing that with us. And I encourage you to hang out with your spontaneous art.
Well, thank you for the show and letting me call in.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Okay, now I think we're headed up right now to another break. So we've got a couple more callers. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for calling. This is really, really fun. And I'm relaxing now because it feels like it's a dialogue, which is what I really deeply wanted. So we're going to go to break and then we'll pick up and talk to some more callers after break.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
With so much loss, you may feel like you can't handle it all. Meditation or other spiritual practices can help you feel more grounded and better able to cope.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose. To link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
At the Equal Justice Initiative, we believe mass incarceration has to end. We have to confront our history of racial injustice and commit to a new era of truth. And the truth can inspire change. Please learn more at EJI.org.
Okay, well, we're back from break. And I think we've got Susie from Pennsylvania on hold.
Hey, Sam.
Are you ready? There she is.
I'm
hey.
Ready. Hey, how you doing? So
great. Thank you for calling.
For you. Sure. This is a great topic, and I had a question for you, something that I struggle with mightily. You sound so free about the expression of your creativity, and my creativity comes mostly from writing songs, and the songs I write are usually based on stories of my life or the lives of people I've met or I love, and they're intensely personal. And I've written many and shared so few. And I want your thoughts about why it's so hard to share something so personal, because I think really the joy in it is the sharing. And I find that so hard.
Well, is that true? Is the joy in the sharing, or is it in the I mean, because we're talking about like what it provides for the inside self. When you're creating, is it that you're actually, it's interesting because as I was preparing today, I had to actually write in my journal, I don't have to share everything, because I think that the psyche gets tired of being put to use. And so it's really a question is there a place where maybe underneath you're your psyche is put to use in lots of ways and doesn't want this put to use? I mean, that would be one path I might explore.
I don't know.
Susie?
Yeah, I'm
Are you still there?
I am here, yes.
Okay, I thought we lost you.
No. But there's like a gap in the talking and the, it's like an old cell phone, an old cell. So it's interesting what you said about the sharing. I think for me, it's such hard work to get the song written. I mean, it takes everything I have inside, and I'm usually sort of exhausted after it. But the sharing does matter to me. I think it feels like a way that I would share something that's so vulnerable that that would be that should be, I would like to be a safe way to share that with the people in my world. But
so I have a thought about that. If that's really the place that matters, is I think when you start really little, right? So some of that drawing that I was talking about, I started literally just drawing stick figures like for 2 months. So in the context of sharing your song, it might be that you share a snippet, or it might be that you share it with your best friend, or it might be that you share it at a dinner gathering. It's kind of like, I often feel like we jump from 0 to 90 miles an hour with everything, or we imagine that that's what it's supposed to, but really one step at a time allows us and really gives ourselves a break, right? To take our time and really honor like what's true, because what you want is you want your whole self to be present when you share your song, right? I mean, I have had moments in my life where I shared something before my whole self was there, and I ended up doing my share of backtracking because of it. So that would be one of the things, is start in little, small, tiny ways that might not even look like sharing exactly, but they still get you moving in that direction.
That's interesting. Okay. I will give some thought to that. Can I ask you one more question?
All right. Well, and how awesome that you write music.
Yeah.
Right?
I enjoy it. I come from a family of visual artists, so this is a little bit different, but it's always been my form of self-expression from a creative standpoint. They're my go-to place.
Well, I'm so glad you shared it with us. I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, we have to create a venue where people can share their creative things, but I don't have anything like that right now. But I do feel like, again, the idea of creativity, any creativity being used purposefully to open up the inner relationship with the self, you've really zeroed in on that. One of the places to open up that relationship is to find a way to let that vulnerability be the thing you work through. So I'm hoping that you find that helpful.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in.
You.
I'm so glad to hear from you.
Great. This is great.
All right. Good.
I look forward to listening to the rest. Thanks, Sam. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, have a great day. Bye. All right. This is so cool. We actually have all these callers coming in. This is what I was really hopeful for. And I know I've said it about 27 times, but I just feel like, and I'm going to take a moment to say this, there's a lot of rhetoric and language out there about how to evolve or develop yourself. And the challenge with it is it comes in like kind of a hat, and it sits on your head. And then, it's like you can think about it and find it interesting, but it doesn't mean it's easy to integrate or to connect with your unique path, your unique journey, and the way you process and think about life. And so that's why this has just been so important, is if I was going to talk about growth work and I was going to talk about all the worlds of going inside, that it didn't feel like it was rich and nourishing unless we could connect it with people's actual experiences. So that's why it matters, and that's why I keep saying so much about it. So, all right, we've got Diana from Pennsylvania.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am calling about the creative thing that you were talking about, which is we're all creative. And I find, and I'm one of those that never really, I was one that wasn't creative. And I find my artwork is basically hearts and daisies. And I have perfected them, but I also have discovered that when I do try to do art, with my daughter, I really just judge it. Like it almost takes the joy out of it. And I was wondering how, I mean, not that you have to figure out a way to have me enjoy art, but how that relates to whatever I'm doing with myself.
Well, the thing that's interesting, again, remember, this is all a study, right? We're really not trying to fix things when we're doing self-development work. We're trying to understand ourselves better. So inside of that, when you say I notice myself really judging, that's an interesting thing, because it means then that that's the part that's really running the show, right? So the question I would have is, do you want to open up a part that doesn't respond to the judgment?
I would love to, I think.
Okay. Well, so one of the things you might think about is that you actually, in your daisies and your hearts, is if you were to think about which one of those is the judger, are either one of those images a judger, the daisy or the heart?
No.
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 So you'd have
I don't know. I don't know. That felt tricky. I don't know.
Okay. Well, so the thing you might think about is that you could actually put your judger in your art. You could decide what the image is, or I don't know what, I didn't know whether it's a daisy or a heart, but some image that, because it sounds like when you said I perfected those images measure up to what your judger expects. So I would start playing with having my judger get on the page. Right. And you could make him look like a rock, or her. I shouldn't give a gender, but you could make it be depicted by anything, and then see what happens as you give the judger a voice inside of this creative space that you're trying to work with.
Well, that sounds kind of interesting. I think I could do a rock because I can't really judge it so much.
Yeah, well, and then I think about rocks, and someday you could be a geode and you could crack it open and see what's in there.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Right, well, that sounds like something you might try on or play with, or.
Yep. No, I will. Actually, the next time I do something with my daughter, it's certainly going to expand my daisy and heart. So thank you.
Well, you are welcome. It was an interesting thing that you shared, this idea that there's these couple of things that you'd like to draw. I do think that that's okay too, right, in life. Like whatever we like to draw is where we start. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that's actually what happened is I never even got to daisies and hearts when I was in school. I just decided I did not draw, period. And I had an art class that they gave us like four things you could do. One was you painted a mountain scene that the mountains had to be purple. And then there were 3 other things. There was no drawing and no sketching in that class. So it was kind of like, going from like a very beginner to somebody saying, oh, you should be able to do art. And it pretty much killed that whole idea for me. So this idea that even you have daisies and hearts is a starting place to open that space up for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day. And I'm so glad you called. All right. We've got one more caller. Wanda from Virginia.
Hello?
Hello, Wanda. Welcome to the show.
Yes. Hi. Well, thank you for taking my question. And it's great to hear you over the radio. And my question is, I've never considered myself artistic. I've never taken an art class. But through some of the things you've shared and taught on your website, I just wanted to comment on how much I appreciate that process of kind of doodling when you're journaling, that I don't think I'm drawing anything or that it has any meaning or insight for me. And then I'll look at it like 2 days later or a week later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it has form, it has shape, it has like a real meaning for me. And I just wanted to share with you and thank you for teaching me that process, because I think it's really helped me not only look forward to the journaling, because it's just not all words. It's a little bit easier for me to sometimes just sketch or, as I said, doodle. But that also, looking back, it's amazing the shape it takes.
Wow. Well, I say wow because it's a great story. And as you talk about the idea that journaling is just words, when you think about that, like a certain aspect of the brain does words, but these other parts want to have a different voice. They want to find their way onto the page. And what you're describing is in those small sketches is that it becomes richer, right? It's like a richer dialogue with yourself. And as long as you keep allowing it, the next thing you know, there's more to look into and understand when you get through it. And so I want to say, of course, you're welcome that you got to find that. One of the things that's happening in the world right now is all of this incredible scrapbooking and sketchbooking. And, this is one of the things that Cynthia taught me too, is it's just like you just start creating, you just start putting things places. And the minute you do that, you start seeing yourself reflected back, which is kind of what you're describing. So
yeah,
I'm super glad it's been helpful.
Yes.
Fun. And right, it should be fun, right?
Absolutely. Well, it makes it exciting because you don't, it's a mystery, that's unveiling itself as I go along. So it's been great.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for participating in our community and also for sharing it here on the radio so other people can get access to it as well.
Okay, thanks.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Wanda, have a great day.
You too.
All right. So I have about 2 more minutes, and then I need to make sure I have time to close. So Diane from PA, can you hop on for just a minute or two, and then we can close out our show, our debut show, our inaugural show.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and I'm going to just tell everyone this is my mom. So I just want you all to know my mom's calling in. Thanks, Mom.
I am. Well, but I'm going to give you a message that's coming straight from California. Carrie had said that she was listening live, but that all of a sudden she lost her audio, and that she was going to listen to you on Spotify. And at that particular point, I didn't know if your callers knew that they could hear it on Spotify later. I wasn't sure about that.
Okay, well, I'll definitely address it. So I appreciate you getting on and sharing that.
Okay, so now I have a question. What? Am I done?
Okay.
No,
we have
am
one
I
more
done?
Minute.
Okay. All right.
What
Well,
do you mean,
I'll call in.
You have one more minute.
I'll call in first. I'll call in first next time.
No, you have 1 more minute. Go ahead.
Okay. So you've been talking about art, and I love art, but I don't seem to find a lot of time or make time to do it. So I was wondering if you could address it in the everyday doing that I am engaged in. Like, how do I find time to sit down and explore it, maybe in another way or in what I'm doing?
Well, I'm going to answer this kind of quickly because I have found this to be really effective for me, is that I don't find time for it. It just is when I'm doing something, I have a pencil and I doodle. And that's really where it starts, because it's kind of like if you try to do it big, I think you don't, like I think it ends up when you've got other things and that mechanism of life is running. So to me, what happens is it's like right now, if you were talking and you had a pencil in your hand, you'd actually draw a little telephone or you draw a mic. Like the key is to actually start just putting visuals or like, like depicting it, because you're in it, and it's not art that you're going to show anybody. It's an expression of that moment that you're in. And I feel like when that starts to become part of your life, it gets easier.
Okay. I will try that.
All right?
All right. Thank you very much.
Listen, I love you, Mom.
I love you too, honey. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, okay, we are nearing the end of our show. I'd like to leave you with an idea or a thought, and I hope that all this talk about creativity becoming the highway or pathway to the inner self, I hope that one piece of it has registered for you, something that will niggle in the back of your mind, that you might consider that it has more implication and more purpose in your life than just the drawing itself. It actually creates a communication mechanism that you wouldn't have without it. So here's my thought, which is that you can't rush your transformation in life or what there is to learn or evolve through. But what you can do is intentionally show up and invite it in. And that's what creativity does. Creativity, and what I mean by creativity is, again, this idea that you aren't just operating from the left or the right brain, the things that you know, the things that are already in play, but you're opening to something new. What you're doing when you do that is you're inviting your own accelerated development in a new way. And, when we accelerate our development, it means that we just have access to so much more to play with. So, and then the very last thought that I want to make sure is that you walk away knowing that you are the most fascinating story that you'll ever read or live through, and that is so easily forgotten, that we go through our days, and depending on how they bump us around, it's so easy to just kind of become a workhorse, right? A broom. You become the sponge. And what we really want to do is celebrate your uniqueness, and you're the only one who can do it the most, right? So thank you for being on my show, my inaugural show. Thank you for allowing some of the extra logistics pieces that happened. And I do hope you'll show up with me next week and on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also this show will be in the archives and will go to Spotify. So anybody who wants to listen to it, it'll be available, after today. So, okay, I think that's it. Have a great evening, and thank you for being part of my world.